let's call this meeting, it's a joint meeting of the City Council and the School Board Finance Committees. On the city side, our purpose tonight is to have a public hearing on the school budget. And unless something changes, our intent is to make a recommendation to the full City Council. It's always awkward doing introductions in these. How about if I introduce the school folks and let you, somebody on the school board, decide if you want to introduce everybody or go around on your own. So I'm Nick Mavadonis. I'm at-large counselor and chair of this committee. We have going around the screen, Tae Chong, who's a District 3 counselor, not on the committee. Thanks for being here. Mark Dion, District 5 counselor. He is on the committee. Pius Ali, also an at-large counselor, not on the committee. Thank you for being here. Counselor Andrew Zarrow, District 4 counselor, also not on the committee, but joining us, so thank you. Mayor Kate Snyder, who is ex officio member of the committee. She doesn't vote on this. Let's see, Brendan O'Connell, who is the finance director, Ian Bilodeau, who is the deputy finance director, John Jennings, who's the city manager, Ethan Hipple is the director of Parks and Rec. Tiffany Mullen is behind the scenes helping us manage the meeting. And did I miss anybody from the city who's on the screen? I hope not. Emily or Anna, how do you want to? I don't know how you guys usually do intros.
I can take a stab at it. I'm Anna Trevorrow. I'm the chair of the finance committee for the school district. And I'll just go across my screen top to bottom. I have Ann Rothaker, who is the executive secretary. Emily Figdor, the school board chair. Javier Botana, superintendent. Roberto Rodriguez, at-large board member and member of the finance committee. Yusuf, at-large member of the school board. Aura Russell-Better, District 3 member of the school board. Kathy Winchenbach, our school finance director. Grace Valenzuela, she's our communications director. Mickey Bondo, District 1 school board rep. I think that's everybody.
Thank you. And as I may have mentioned, but I don't know if we were broadcasting, April Fournier, who's an at-large counselor and member of the committee, was on her way home from work, so she's going to be just a couple of minutes late. Our agenda tonight is primarily a public hearing and on the school budget. But Emily, Anna, Javier, do you guys have anything you want to say at the beginning of the meeting?
I think we have one very brief update. Our figures changed very slightly since the last joint finance committee meeting based on sort of projected figures becoming known figures. And we just wanted to make sure you had that information. And then we thought we'd just kind of be here for any questions you might have during your deliberations.
Okay, great.
So I guess if you want to start with that, I would turn it to Superintendent Botana.
Yeah, and Kathy has a brief PowerPoint that she can walk through just to make sure that you're fully understanding how we decreased from what you last saw to where we are today. So Kathy, do you want to share your screen?
I realize I'm muted. Hopefully everyone can see the screen.
Yes.
Okay. So good evening. As Anna just mentioned, the section is going to just review the latest changes that we have incorporated now into the school board recommended budget. So the original budget, the Finance Committee recommended budget that we had showed before we had these latest reductions that we had a $125.8 million budget, which was represented a 5% increase over last year and a 6.29% school rate increase. And that's showing how we compared to last year, the $119.9 million last year from 20 to 21, the increase over the previous year budget was 2.1%, and the school tax rate increase was 0. And that was before we had the latest reductions that are related to a change in our health insurance estimate and an additional state allocation of our CTE, which is our career and technical education allocation from the state. And that changed us a little bit to a $125.2 million budget, a 4.4% increase over last year, and a 5.51% rate increase in the school tax. So the expenditure budget decreased due to a change in the estimated amount of the employer-paid health insurance. We had budgeted a worst-case 6% increase. We were recently notified by Anthem that our rates would be remaining the same for FY22 as FY21. That is, we have a 0% increase. So this change in estimate resulted in an across-the-board decrease in health insurance benefits of $661,060. Our baseline expenditure budget that included investments decreased. It went from $125,815,760, or the $125.8 million, to $125,154,700, or the $125.2 million. And then on the revenue side, on April 5th, our CTE allocation increased by 90,000, and this resulted in an increase from about 3.2 million to 3.3 million in our allocation. And this change impacted the amount of property taxes that need to be raised. So it was basically a redistribution or a shifting of funding sources from property taxes to non-tax revenue where the state subsidy resides. So the end result was that our property tax revenue was reduced by about 751,000, which was the 661,000 reduction in expenditures and the 90,000 increase in revenue. So let's see how this slide shows that the board recommended budget actually added 64 cents to the school portion of the tax rate for a total school tax rate of $12.33. I think initially we had shown a $12.43. And the 64 cents represents a 5.5% increase in the school tax rate. So the increase in the property tax valuation alone, this 85 million, increased the revenue by approximately 1 million before we would see an increase in the tax rate. But thereafter, each percentage increase in the tax rate will yields approximately 953,000 in property tax revenue, and it represents an estimated 12-cent tax rate increase. And the next slide just shows this graphically, that the school board recommended budget would add 64 cents to the school portion of the tax rate for a total school tax rate of $12.33. And then we recognize that a revaluation will occur, but we used 250,000 as the average assessed value of a home today. And so it would represent an annual increase in property taxes of about $161. And those are the key points that highlight what the change, how the change impact the budget.
Thank you, Kathy.
And that's all we had today.
Oh, okay, thanks. Before we get into public testimony, Brendan, do you have anything? And I haven't chatted with you, so I'm just double checking.
Nope, I don't have anything.
All right. Are there any questions that counselors might have before we go to the public? I'm not seeing, I want to make sure I'm not seeing any hands. I am not. So then let's go to our public hearing. And we have people who are attending. I'll just go over our rules, which are probably the same as the school board's rules. So when we'll ask that you put your hand up, and we'll call on you to speak. We'll call on folks in the order that their hands go up on the screen. We ask that you give us your name and address or organization that you are speaking on behalf of. I'm sure everybody here is to speak to the school budget, but just to be clear, we ask that you speak to the item that's before us, not some other council-related item that might be on your mind tonight. This is specifically on the school budget. And we ask that people, are courteous to others and thoughtful in their comments. And I'm sure everybody who's in the list will be anyway, but I just wanted to kind of go over those general rules. If for some reason, somebody isn't, we'll deal with it. We can mute people, which we can't do in person. So anyway, with that, I think we will go to the public, and let's see who's first. First hand up is from Stephen Scharf.
Counselor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Emily.
I see one of our school board members among the attendees, Adam Burke, and I'm wondering if we.
I see that. Yep. Tiffany, can you move Adam Burke over to being a panelist, please?
Thank you, and sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, I'm glad you did. I hadn't seen his name there. Stephen Scharf.
Stephen Scharf of Brackett Street in Portland. I also know April Fournier has joined you.
I'm sorry. I kept saying April would be here. I didn't mention that she had joined us.
So,
thanks, Stephen.
For the record.
Keep me honest.
That I prefer to be the last to speak, but with this poor setting of having to speak to you via Zoom as opposed to in person, I can't wait till we can be back in person and be able to meet you all in person. But I will take this opportunity to speak to the school budget and reiterate what I've told the school board and for others, that this budget is significantly too much of a burden for the taxpayers of Portland, even with the slight reduction. And I want to encourage the Finance Committee to reject it and send it back and insist that the school board come back with at least a minimum of a 0% increase. And knowing that the city is coming in with I can't remember the exact percentage increase, but a decrease, a decrease, that the school board should hone its knives and look for places that we don't need stuff. Significant is that although the school staff is projecting, they've got two separate projections. One is for a projection of the same number of students approximately coming back, and another projection where they think every student in Portland is going to show back up. I've been out as I work. I see kids out there during the day running around doing stuff, and I'm like, "Why aren't you in school?" It's like, "Oh, I don't care. School will happen when it happens." Until they get the schools back in place 100%, I don't see these kids coming back in any numbers. And I really don't think we're going to get the numbers back that they've been projecting. And what that loss entails is it's equal to a whole school, elementary school. We could actually eliminate one of our elementary schools and still handle the capacity for the students we have in the city of Portland. Middle school would be a little tighter. But possibly in the future, we could be looking at one high school plus, or Casco Bay going away.
Even you've got about a minute left, just so you know.
Yeah. But I just don't see the need for the money that they're asking for. It is just outrageously high, and we encourage you to send the budget back to them with a no.
Thank you, Stephen. Next in the queue is Marfine Chan.
That was fast. Thank you so much, counselors and school board members, for having me here and for all the work that you do. I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm in favor of the budget as it's proposed, specifically the $2.9 million that's being proposed to invest in a more equitable Portland school district. Just a little story. Well, first, let me backtrack. I am a resident of Portland, 25 Ratcliffe Street, and I'm also here speaking on behalf of as president of the Cambodian Community Association. But in terms of what the story I was going to tell, he's not a student at in Portland schools, but he goes to Westbrook Middle School, and I'm a mentor of his, and he is both Cambodian and deals with some disabilities. And I know how important it is to have not only connections to the community, but also connections in his school system that is supportive, both through nonprofits and through guidance counselors in the schools. So I was very happy to see that the Portland School District will be making some major investments in the ELL program, along with the investments to improve how they serve students with disabilities. And there was another line item where more dollars would be directed towards professional development that I also really approved of. And then the line where they are including or making the shift of the DEI position from a grant funded to school funded, I think was a symbolic move, but a very important move. And so, I promise to keep this short and sweet. I support this in its entirety and encourage both the school board and the finance committee of this council to move this forward to the council. Thank you.
Thanks, Marfine. Next up is Zach. Are you there, Zach? Tiffany, any luck with Zach?
I have allowed him to talk and he's not muted, so.
All right, well, let's do this then. Let's come back to Zach and let's go next to Nazreen. Nazreen, you should be unmuted.
Nazreen needs to unmute.
Yeah, you need to unmute yourself, Nazreen. You're muted on your end. You're unmuted here. Well, we may come back to Nazreen and Zach. We'll come back to you in a moment. Next is Catherine Buxton.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Catherine Buxton. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a resident of 114 Washington Avenue. And I want to urge the committee to recommend moving forward this budget as it's proposed. I think this budget meets the moment and provides the necessary resources to not only allow students to thrive, but to get at the hard work of addressing the opportunity gap in our schools and promote greater racial equity. Just as our dollars as a community go towards new parks or waterfront developments or sidewalk repairs, just as we sign off on housing developments that we might never live in, we do so because we know that they provide housing and economic opportunity for the city as a whole. And so to do our schools. They provide opportunities for our students to thrive. And if our students are thriving, I believe we are all thriving. In my professional work, I helped work on the sexual harassment training with other area nonprofits and some really amazing PPS staff and former students. And I am particularly excited about the ombudsman position that is being proposed. I just think that's a really important way to respond to student reports of bias and harassment. It's an important resource and accountability measure for students. And I'm so emboldened by the choice that folks made to bring that forward. It shows a deep commitment and responsiveness, frankly, of PPS administrators to students' requests and their needs, and is a great commitment to building a community of care. And so as a resident, as a violence prevention professional, I'm very proud to support this proactive budget. Our schools are a deep benefit to our community. The quality of our schools benefit homeowners and taxpayers who invest in them too. So looking at this from an equity perspective, this budget is an investment in the future of our cities, our future leaders, our future change makers. And if we're going to make a commitment to racial justice, which so many community members have expressed that we should, so many folks in this Zoom room have expressed that we should, we all have to, including taxpayers, make that investment. And I think the investment that this budget is asking is not huge, but I think it is an important investment in a more racially diverse and racially just community, and one that builds that into our schools. So I urge you to support this budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Next, I'm guessing it's the same Zach. Zach Barowitz.
Zach Barowitz, Hunter Street.
Zach, was that you trying to get on before, or was that a different Zach?
It was the same Zach, different.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Honorable members of the school board and finance committee, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to speak in favor of this budget. A lot is said about equity in our city, and this one actually is the implementation of it. It serves the people who are living in Portland now. It's not likely to attract new people, such as those coming from New York, trying to escape paying for private schools by coming to a Class A public school system. It's a system it's budget for the here and now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach. Next is C. Foster.
Hi, I didn't realize my full name wasn't on there. This is Carrie Foster, PEA president.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. I wondered if that was you, but I didn't want to be presumptuous.
Oh, no problem. I'm calling to support this budget because it includes quite a lot of investments in physical and mental health, ELL and outdoor learning, equity pre-K, and special education, all of which we're going to need as we start to claw our way out of this pandemic, and all of which have an ROI that benefits the entire community. They're really important for the continued good work of our staff and the continual improvement of our students, all of our students. And as a side note, I want to thank all the educators, support staff, and everyone here working for our students, especially as we think about showing the importance of the work we're all doing by passing this budget. So thank you for putting the time in. Thank you for the consideration, and I am calling in support.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm going to try Nazreen again, please.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Nazreen. Hello, city mayor, city council, school board member. I am 100% support of the school budget, and as I have two nephews. My sister is a single mother, so somehow this budget would definitely help the students like my nephews. And also, you have to, what I will have to say about that is overwhelmingly been supported by the school members. And I want City Council to consider that, to put it on the ballot so Portland voters can support it. That'd be all. Thank you so much. I'm fully supportive of the school board budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazreen. Somebody else had their hand up. Is that still the case? I don't see a hand. Is there anyone left who wants to speak? John Thibodeau. Go ahead, John.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Thank you, Councilor Mavadonis, and the committee and school board members. John Thibodeau, 114 Clinton Street. And I guess I just want to appreciate all the work that all of you have put into this and will continue to put into it. And I guess I'll just ask you to consider a handful of things that I think are important that stand out in this. First of all, I think this is a historic budget. I think this is I think this is the most equity-focused school budget in Portland history. I think that's what we're talking about here. It has that type of gravity, that type of importance. So I'd ask you to consider that. Second thing is the census data came out, I think, last week. And, I think we all know Maine is a stagnant population and aging population. I think we need to keep that in mind. And I think when we talk about Portland's school budget, it's different than the school budget of Yarmouth or Falmouth or Scarborough. Our community is very different than those places. It's not just a school budget. It is this wonderful school community that is nearly 50% students of color. It's a very different situation, many of whom are recent immigrants or first generation. So it's very different when we talk about a school budget for an outlying suburb versus a school budget for a city like Portland, which is really unique. Maybe Lewiston is the only other comparable city in the state. So I'd ask you to, again, look at it through that lens. And on top of that, we're one of the few attractive places in the state for young immigrant families, and they are mostly of color. That's a really good thing. As we all know, there's a desperation now with many employers looking for employees and workers. We're one of the few places that can attract young people and young families. We want to be able to invest in them to keep them here. And then obviously the historic time that we're in right now. I think all of us hopefully are becoming much more aware of the historic and systemic racism that permeates throughout our society, throughout our schools, throughout our government, throughout our communities. Again, keeping that in mind. And then for those of you who have been on the school board or followed school issues, we all know the opportunity gap, the gap between students of color and students who are white is a big gap, and it is the primary challenge of the school system, and it has been for years. So we need to remember this. This is the biggest single challenge of the school district. We also know that education is powerful and transformative. It can be an investment like no other. And that is, I think it's important to remember as well. Again, thinking in terms of investment. So,
John, you've got about 20 seconds left.
Can I ask for an additional 35 or 40 seconds?
Sure, another 30 seconds would be fine.
So, keeping all of that in mind, I think we have an incredible opportunity as a city to address historic racism and inequity and really wisely invest in young people in our school communities. The last two parts, just financial pieces. We all know that revaluation is happening as well. This school budget can pass as is, and we can still see our mill rate drop probably $2 or $3, keeping that in mind. And the last thing is about pension debt, which is to keep in mind kind of long-term thinking that, there's it's available, and some people have argued we should use that here. I would argue, no, we should not use it here because that's a one-time drop. And this is what we're talking about is long-term investment. And then also thinking about in 2026, the pension debt obligation goes off the board and $22 million gets cleared up in 2027. And that's really important. That's a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money, and it's not that far away. So thank you for your time, and I hope you vote to support the school budget. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next is Noof.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Nofal Sukaini. I'm a community organizer and I'm Arabic interpreter with the language access providers. My daughter goes to Lyman Moore Middle School, and I'm here today to show my support to the budget. Last year and this year was very difficult for my daughter and most of the students and all Portland students. So I believe they need more support so they can catch up. As a parent and as a community organizer who knows a lot about students and their families, I ask you to pass this budget. And thank you so much. And we really appreciate your services.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next is Tim Atkinson. Go ahead, Tim. Welcome back.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilor Mavadonis and City and Board Finance Committees. So my name is Tim Atkinson. I live on Hartley Street here in Portland, and I'm the parent of a pre-K student at Rowe School and a third grader at Longfellow Elementary. And I'm here to speak in support of the school board's proposed budget. Like many others, I've been reading through the city charter lately, and right there in the preamble, the charter states, our government shall provide public education that enables all residents to acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to participate fully in Portland's civic, intellectual, cultural, and economic life in order to enrich and strengthen our community and common future. And, you know, in addition to that commitment, this year has shown us very clearly the critical role that public education plays in our community and our local economy. I believe that this budget will make education in our city more accessible to students by adding pre-K classrooms, adding pre-K transportation to make those classrooms accessible to a more diverse population, and expanding support for English language learners. Every learner in the city of Portland has a right to public education, and this budget helps to move our city closer to building a more equitable school district. So thank you all for your hard work on the budget this year. It's appreciated, and I understand what an undertaking it is. So thank you all.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for being here. I don't see any other hands up. There's somebody with a 440 area code that hand has been up and down, I think. So I just want to see if you want to speak. I do have a hand now from Lily, and I just want to say if anybody else wants to speak, please put your hand up because we'll be closing the public comment shortly if we don't have any more speakers. Go ahead, Lily.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks for having me. My name's Lily Chaliff. I live in the East End of Portland. I work at Cultivating Community and partner closely with the Portland Public Schools through my role as the school's program manager. And I just wanted to speak today in strong support of passing the school budget. I also want to be here partially to raise up all the community voices who I work with, who I know don't have the time or ability to navigate being here. We sent you all an email today in support, and on that email, there's many different folks from teachers, principals, parents from 9 different schools, as well as representatives from 7 different community organizations who've already signed on, and more have been flowing in since I sent it. So I work with Food Fuels Learning, which is a food security initiative partnering with Portland Public Schools. And a subgroup of that is the School Garden Network, which I coordinate. And all of this work that we do is rooted in equity, cultural inclusivity, and doing everything we can to help students, families, and the schools reach our full community potential. And we really see this school budget as meeting the moment, as others have said, putting resources behind the promise of equity. And we understand how much this connects to food security and all the other basic needs that students need to be able to thrive in our community and our school environment. And I also am specifically really excited about and in support of some of the pandemic integration innovations in the school budget, specifically the outdoor learning coordinator, which is something that I personally have been working to organize for many years with many different people in the district. We know how much benefit school gardens have in both curriculum, emotional, social learning, and just the general school environment, and played a big support role in helping outdoor learning be possible this year to have schools open safely, and are just really grateful that the school district is working to sustain this through the budget. And we think that it's a huge benefit to all of our students and the community. So I hope that all of you will support this budget. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Lily. Next is Ahmed.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for holding this important hearing. My name is Ahmed Abdurrahman. I'm the former president of Maine Muslim Community Center. Currently working in the hospital in the ICU as respiratory therapist. I have 6 kids going to Portland Public Schools from high school to K. I have worked with the school members of school board as well as the superintendent and in the community. The COVID-19 in 2020 has widened so badly the gap between, those advantaged and disadvantaged students. And even my kids, my 6 kids, even though I thought I was educated, I will be able to handle the homeschooling, it was very tough, and some of them have fallen far back. So I am calling in support of this budget. I think it reflects the challenge of COVID-19 and the existing gaps between the students. It will be helping the teachers, the students, the families. I'm in support of it, and I appreciate everyone for taking the time to listen to us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here tonight, Ahmed. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us tonight? Kate Kessler. Go ahead, Kate.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for taking public comment. I am a teacher at LISA. I am a parent of students at Ocean. I live on 10 Parsons Road. My husband and I sent a letter to the committee today in support of the school budget, but I wanted to hop on since I had a couple minutes before I went home from school to just really express my support both personally and professionally for the full budget as it's proposed. I've been taking part in a lot of webinars and doing a lot of equity work, both personally and professionally, and am part of the equity cohort team at LISA through public schools. And
go ahead, Kate. I lost my screen for a minute, but go ahead.
That's okay. And one of the things that I'm really coming to understand is the importance of changing structural systems in order to meet the needs of students. And I feel that the school district is really working in that direction, and we need the support of the city in order to be successful. I see this in terms of needs for my students, but also personally, I think it would benefit my own children who are white. But I think, in terms of their experiences at school, I want them to see all of their classmates being successful. I want them to see children of color having similar experiences and opportunities that they're having. I don't want them going to, extracurriculars where they end up being in a group of all white children. That's not why we live in Portland. We live here intentionally. We value the community. We value the opportunities that the diversity brings. And I feel like we really need to support those opportunities structurally. And this is just the beginning, I feel personally, of how we need to be doing that. Professionally here at school, we talk all the time about how to best meet the needs of different groups of students, English language learners, students with special needs. And it's all often feeling like a work around a really simple solution, which is to hire more people. So really,
you got about a minute left.
Thank you. So really, I feel like this budget is to me, it's a no-brainer as a taxpayer, as a parent, as a teacher, and I would actually love to see it go farther. And I hope that this is, the beginning of continued commitment from the city on these initiatives, because it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take all of us, not just the school district doing it. So those are my comments, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kate. I struggle with the timer, sorry. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us who hasn't already spoken? I do not see any more hands, so I'm going to close the public comment and we will come back to the committee. And I promised Councillor Chong, he has to leave by 6, so I want to make sure he has a chance to speak. Do you want to go now, Tay, before anybody else? Because I know you've got a meeting.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nick. I think the idea of racial equity is timely. Anyone who knows me has been, they know that I've been advocating for increasing or lessening the gap between Black and Brown students for almost a decade now. Javier knows since the minute he arrived, I've been talking to him about that. And I'm glad that we're addressing this now. And I wish I can't comment on policy, but if I was on the school committee, I would ask for more money around certain issues. But I also think, when we see things like Black and Brown kids are not showing up to school, and their truancy rates and attendance rates are close to 200%, increase from last year. And Javier mentioned that, for Latinx kids at the Portland High School, it's almost 40%. I don't see resources around those kind of supportive services. He mentioned that there are 3 social workers, which is great, but that's a huge caseload for really difficult cases. And I think it's wonderful all those ideas are there. For me personally, I would love to see Esl certifications for teachers so that they're not, shipped out to specific classes. $1 million in ELL doesn't go far enough. And there's an opportunity with $17 million from ARP money to address a lot of these issues. And I'm still kind of in the dark about how the ARP monies are going to be used. My biggest concern is these kind of wonky ESL strategic initiatives are going to get lost in the ARP participatory discussions. And I feel that a lot of that should be already earmarked. And if a lot of the ARP monies are for learning losses, it seems to me that addressing a lot of the racial equity stuff could, a lot of those monies could come from the ARP funds. The other thing that I have no problems with increases in the school budget, but I have problems with increases in the overall tax rate, because as we know, any kind of increase in the tax rate is going to affect our marginalized populations the most in terms of rent or whether it's property taxes. So a 5.5% on the school side, whereas a 4% decrease on the city side still means an increase, in potentially rent or tax, property taxes for our poorest community members. And that to me doesn't make sense when we have $17 million on the table that could be used to address a lot of these issues. So my recommendation is absolutely go forward with the racial equity piece, but also be mindful of some of the marginalized populations and elderly populations who are on fixed incomes to make sure that we come up with a budget that is fair. And if we have $17 million coming from the federal government, try to figure out how we can balance those funds. So that is where I stand. So I really appreciate the thoughtfulness. Obviously, if it were me, I would do more, but if it's a participatory budget process, I will say my 2 cents. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that as a counselor, but that is something that I just wanted to say out there. I think it's important for us to look at the overall population, especially when we still haven't coming out of the COVID economic crisis, because we are, in many respects, we have lots of different economic sectors, but the people who are affected the most were in the tourism and restaurant sectors. And those people who were paid the least are still hurting. And any kind of increases in rent and property taxes are going to hurt them as well. And those populations happen to be the very people that we're trying to address with the racial equity pieces that the school committee has come up with. So I think that it's important to try to figure out how to minimize pain for everyone and still do something progressive. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tay, and thanks for joining us. And I know you got to get off to a neighborhood meeting. Counselors, Finance Committee members who are counselors, questions, comments? Mark. And then April.
I should learn how to use the technology better.
You should see me trying to use the stopwatch on my phone.
I want to say that I agree with Councillor Chong's analysis. I've participated in many votes in prior careers up in the legislature, and I don't think there's one that's caused me as much concern as this one. I looked at the budget, went line by line and said, what could I cut? And I couldn't find anything to cut. So let me put that out there. I think the initiative makes a lot of sense. It should occur. But then the piece that troubles me is how to pay for it. That's a significant piece. Every one of the citizens and constituents who spoke tonight spoke to the merits of the policy initiative. And I think they're correct. And I understand their perspective and what we should accomplish. No one has spoken directly on how to pay for this, recognizing the situation we're in. Now, I spent some time going over my notes and looking at the material the superintendent has provided around reevaluation. And the term that I kept falling down on was this idea. It's simply a redistribution. That's almost too diluted to have any relevance for me, because there'll be a significant number of our taxpayers who will get a significant increase. They will be asked to pay more. And I know it's popular to say those who have more should pay more, but on an individual household, that's a difficult thing to recognize. The middle of our community will likely pay something more than they're paying today. Against the backdrop where everyone's struggling, I had a conversation today and someone told me, oh, you're from North Deering, it won't be a problem. I go, well, listen, you'd be surprised how many people here live paycheck to paycheck. The checks are larger. The financial burdens are more significant. They've got kids in college. They have elderly parents to take care of. So their bottom line might look different than someone in another economic position, but the burden is the same. And then I contrast that to the hours that we have spent on the city budget. And the administration has taken deliberate actions to apply available federal funds to ease that burden, to provide a bridge to hopefully a better economic circumstance. And we haven't increased our staff. And I can tell you there are many departments, particularly Health and Human Services, who could use more staff and more programming to meet the needs of our citizens. So the position I take tonight, if my dog doesn't run me over, is I want to support this initiative, but I'm asking you to seriously look at how you can minimize the impact on the average taxpayer by the prudent and sophisticated application of available federal monies. I think that has to occur. I have to hear why it can't, but it has to occur for me to feel comfortable moving this forward. So that's my initial reaction to this. As I said, I have no difference of opinion on the merits of the initiative, but I have significant concerns for the broader taxpayer as to what this means moving forward, because this investment will be part of the structure of the school budget moving forward. It's not a one-off, it's a new way. I want to support the new way. And the only way I can do that is to lessen the impact on the general taxpayer. And the school finance committee may be working with us. We need to look at that federal money and be honest about that. I mean, the average person who's not part of this conversation is going to see 40 new positions as, yes, for them, it will be historic higher, and they're going to wonder why that's occurring and who's paying for that. You know, that's the quiet conversation that's going to occur off in the community that feels they're paying for something and they're not quite sure why it has to cost this much. So those are my initial thoughts for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And sorry, my internet's a little unstable, so I'm saving some of it with not having my video on. April is up next.
Thank you. And I'm hoping that my dogs behave as well. It's that time where people are coming home, they walk by, they're lovely house guarders. So I think I come at this from kind of a different lens, because for me, just, you know, I am by trade an early childhood special educator. And so one of the things that I know is the impact of inconsistency, the impact of missing time on some of our most vulnerable students. And I've seen firsthand, just from working in classroom, you know, with students, that if there is an interruption in services or an interruption in supports that are provided, the time that it takes to recover those skills that are lost it's a significant investment. And so I think I've talked about this before, but, you know, when you have a child who, you know, is integrated into a regular education classroom, they may have some supports and services, but you interrupt that and then try and bring them back to that same spot. It's not going to happen without some significant additional supports added. And I think that's just, if we think about one child, this is thinking about an entire school district that has been out of the norm for about 18 months and will be trying to come back this fall. So for me, you know, it is absolutely an equity conversation, but I come at it thinking of it from this teacher lens of what I've had to do to try and recover classrooms or recover students when there's been those interruptions. And, you know, I am also a homeowner here in East Deering that is concerned about revaluation and concerned about, you know, how do we continue to make sure that we're making our ends meet, you know, if the school budget does go up. You know, one of the things that I have also been trying to think of is, you know, the school budget is one thing, the city budget is one thing, but it's really one, you know, we're funding our city. Sorry, the dogs are going crazy again. And so they're off to the side. They're unofficial counselors. But where I'm going with this is, you know, I certainly don't disagree with my fellow counselors in that we do want to try and reduce the burden on our most vulnerable citizens. We don't want to increase that, but we're also trying to balance that with how do we continue our investments in those most vulnerable that have been so incredibly impacted by COVID, and years and years of not investing in, you know, the ELL supports and services, special education supports and services. Sorry. I'm going to pause because these guys are going bananas. Sorry.
No problem. And for you, those who are on the school board, we're used to the dogs. Do we have any other counselors who would like to speak? I mean, obviously, counselors will take this up when it gets to the full council. Okay, Pius, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I also have to leave in 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
I have an event with my daughter at Portland High School tonight.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I want to thank both the finance committees for the work that they put into this budget. I also want to say that being an individual who during daytime work with a lot of marginalized students in our city, I will encourage you to, I have seen the impact of COVID in these communities, both with students and parents. And what we don't want to happen is once school goes back to normal, to expand. Councillor Tate talk about shrinking or closing that gap between Black and Brown students and general students. What we don't want to happen is that as at now, that gap is widening, probably twice or 1.5 more before we got into the situation that we are in. I hope that tonight the Finance Committee will consider supporting this budget so that we will put resources where it is needed. Yes, we may not be able to close that gap overnight, but it will be a very good place to put the money to start closing that gap. Javier have done a good job working on that. However, COVID have pushed all the work that and the efforts that we've put into that. So we need to put resources there to provide all the resources that is needed to make that happen. So thank you, and I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, Pius, and congratulations to you and your daughter.
Thank you.
April, you're back.
Temporarily, we found Cheerios to feed the dogs. Really, I just wanted to finish with, this is my first time sitting, in the counselor's chair instead of the parent's chair, advocating for the school budget and really trying to balance the things that I hear from constituents. Of course, we have gotten a number of emails that have been both, please pass this, and also, we're not really sure how this is going to work out for taxpayers. So I do just want to make sure that I'm reassuring that I am looking at both sides, but I just have seen the inequities within the school system for so long, experience that as a parent and as a teacher, and really feel like this makes a tremendous investment. So I, really appreciate all of the work that has gone in. One of the questions I had, and I don't know if we're taking questions yet, but
sure, go ahead.
Thanks. So I think this is proposed at 5.5%, and then the city side of the budget is proposed as a decrease in 4.4%. So does that mean that the overall taxpayer increase would be 1.1%? Is that right? Approximately. Brendan, are you there? Is that right?
Brendan, do you want to weigh in on that?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, no, sure, that's fine. So the school side of the budget is proposed to be a 5.5% increase, and the city side is proposed to be a 4.4% decrease. So does that mean overall taxpayers would see a 1.1% increase? Is that
just under 1%?
Just under 1%. Okay. That was all I had. I appreciate it, and thank you for tolerating my dogs.
We love your dogs. Belinda, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. While we still have Brendan, I see he's muted again, but I'm going to ask him a question. There is an increase, right? With the way things are proposed right now, there's an increase. We had a speaker who said the mill rate's still going to go down a couple of dollars. That's not accurate. If these both were to pass, the proposed city budget, the proposed school budget, there would be an increase.
There would be an 18-cent increase to the mill rate.
Right. Okay. So I just want to make sure we were clear. I also wanted to ask a question about the school board vote. I know it was a 7-1 vote, and I was wondering if anyone could clarify the 1 to me. Explain the 1 dissent if we know. I'm sure there was discussion. That would be great. Thank you, Emily.
I'd be happy to, Councillor Ray. Sarah Thompson was away out of town on the night of our vote, but she did indicate that she would have voted for the budget. So she was just absent that night.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a no vote. It was a 7 and 1 absent.
No, we have 9 board members. So
no, okay. So
board member Irish voted against it. All of the other members who were present voted for it, and board member Thompson was absent.
And then we don't have board member Irish here. Is anyone comfortable summarizing that position for me, or would that be better for me to just go to a tape and find?
He didn't provide a lot of substantive feedback for us.
Okay.
So, or nor did he offer any amendments. So it might be best to go directly to him.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one other question I wanted to ask. I think I wanted to make the point. We had one of the people who called say that they were excited about this, and I think we all think these initiatives are necessary. It's only the paying we are struggling with. It's the money piece we're struggling with, how to pay for the necessary work that we need to do across the city on issues of equity, while also making sure we are not forcing people to leave Portland with their families who would be attending our schools, or to leave Portland because they are on fixed incomes and they can no longer afford to be here. So it's the money side we're all trying to figure out. And I guess one thing I wanted to point out is that there was a caller who said, I'd like to see people work on this across the city, not just on the school side. And we would love to do some things on the city side. Nothing has been worked into our budget yet. And we just got a great report from a racial equity steering committee. And if we want to work anything in, we have to add that to our budget, because our city manager prepared a budget to maintain services, to help start to build back services from what we lost during COVID, but said that further initiatives really were going to be the council's purview to add. And if we're looking at going up 5.5% on the school side, I don't know what we can do on the city side. So it really does stymie us as well in terms of trying to make sure we are meeting the needs of all of the people in the city that we need to look at. So I just kind of wanted to make that point that equity is a goal across the city, and we do need to be looking at it everywhere. And I want to make sure that we are able to hopefully put a couple of things into place. I know we have talked about potentially trying to use some of the American Rescue Plan money that's coming to us to try to address things that are one-time issues, that it would take, one-time startup money. And I think I asked previously if there was anything in the current school budget that could be supplanted by this rescue plan money. Is there anything that is a 1 or 2 year program that isn't expected to be continual that could be paid for with the ARP money?
Do you want me to answer that?
Go ahead.
Sure.
So we did provide for the Finance Committee as a follow-up to the last meeting, because Councilor Mavadonis asked that question. So in the board, in the packet that the Finance Committee, that I sent to Mr. O'Connell and City Manager Jennings, there is a detailed spreadsheet that shows what in those investments, which include both the investments that we're proposing to come out of general fund, as well as the investments that we are proposing to spend federal funding on, because I do just want to remind the council members and the finance committee specifically that we also have about $7 million worth of additional investments that are being projected to be funded out of these federal funds, including like $2.5 million worth of summer school and other things. And that spreadsheet that I can, send to you again, if you did not receive it, that has both, what is enduring and what is a one-time investment. And we have, as you may recall, moved some things out of the general fund and put into that bucket that are, those one-time investments. But, I know I've heard from several of the councilors already today about the wanting to have us use the federal funding. And I just want to reiterate that our concern about doing that resides in the fact that these are largely enduring costs. These are largely costs that are tied up in personnel. So if you put them on federal funding now, which we have the capacity to do. I don't disagree with that. If you do that, at the time that federal funding runs out, we will need to increase the budget by whatever is the delta from the federal funds. And so that's where not making those investments, as they're happening now, will create a much bigger gap down the road. And, the school board and the city council will have to grapple with that then.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I certainly don't want you to throw a whole bunch in there that will need to be paid for on an ongoing basis, because then you'll end up with a huge budget gap. I get that. So I can look through and try to find that spreadsheet. And I'm sure I can. It just takes me a little minute. But in that spreadsheet, was there anything then that you could move? It sounds like maybe you did identify some things that hadn't been moved, or no?
Those we documented how we did that already. I will drop this into the there is no chat, so I can't drop it into the chat. I'll be glad to.
I can share it if you'd like me to.
I don't think it's
right now.
Teeny tiny print, and so I don't think that it's going to be particularly helpful to try to put that up on the screen. But I will be happy to send it to
Javier. Can I just jump in to say that at the beginning of our budget development process, it was a very deliberate process of kind of dividing up what are the continuing costs and what are the one-time costs, and moving out everything that we could ahead of time. So I think, you can review the spreadsheet and you'll probably find that there are probably actually some things that I know there are some things that are ongoing costs that we've already moved to the federal dollars. So again, I mean, that increase of, whatever the combined increase between the two ends up being, that's going to be, if we reduce it this year, it's going to be that much more next year.
Okay. Thank
Belinda,
you
you all
very
set?
much.
You all
I
set?
am. Yeah, I am. Yep. Thanks.
Mark has his hand up next, then April, and unless another counselor puts a hand up, I may jump in after them.
I have a question for Brendan if he's available.
Yes, I'm here.
Listen, I want to build on something that Councilor Fournier was bringing up. I'll call it the spread. If we're down 4, they're up 5.5. To achieve a 0 increase budget, then we're 1.5 points away from our goal. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be about an 18-cent decrease to the mill rate, which represents $1.47 million that would need to be reduced from the tax levy. So that could be from a combination of reductions in expenditures or increases in revenue. That's where we need to get the tax levy down to.
So in order for them to achieve their policy goal, we have a 1.5 difference of opinion. And I appreciate the work that the board has done in terms of trying to isolate recurring costs with one-times. Maybe we have to rethink that to say some of the positions need to be carried with federal money, and it buys us 2 years to work it into the general budget. When I say, pass it off on federal money, I'm not saying it as a forever as much as a bridge, so it can ease the burden on the overall tax. I would think a lot of citizens would expect a 0 increase in our budget. And at the same time, if we take advantage of what the city manager and his staff have been able to accomplish on the general government side, it gives us a gap. So it's a portion of your proposal that you'd have to reconsider funding with the feds so that we can get to that goal. Does that make any sense to anyone?
Councillor Diane, can I raise one issue, which is just a reminder that as Portland's valuation continues to increase so quickly, we are losing state funding And so this year we lost about $1 million of state funding, and we expect to continue on that downward trajectory of losing state funding. And we don't have other major revenue sources, as you know. So it puts more of, we have to find more of the money locally. And so that is looking ahead to the future. That continues to be a variable that we need to be cognizant of and plan for.
And I also just remind the board and the council that last year, in order to achieve the 0% tax increase, we moved $1.3 million in custodial salaries onto federal funds. Those $1.3 million continue in this budget. So to your point, Councilor Dion, that 1.4 million that you're talking about would be added to an existing 1.3, creating a $2.7 million gap that would need to be filled just to get us up to level funding.
Well, I appreciate the comments from Chair Figdor and yours as well, Superintendent. But in 2 years' time, we may reevaluate exactly what you need in that particular plan. Maybe I'm myopic. I'm trying to solve the problem we have today so that we can move forward and respect your work and the capacity of the taxpayers to absorb the cost. That's the balance we're at. And I'm just trying to explore that to see if there's a way that we can achieve a common end, right? It'd be simple to just say, no, I don't like this budget. And no one will understand that I'm voting no based on the finance, not necessarily the policy. So I'm doing my best to honor your policy work and try to figure out a way that we can pay for it rather than simply say, we're going to up your taxes without consideration of maybe some other strategies. And that's why when Councilor Fournier brought up the spread, it was worth exploring. But I'll sign off right now and allow the other councilors to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. April and then Andrew.
Thank you. And I'm quick, and it's really more of a thinking out loud. So thank you for indulging me to let me speak again. And Brendan, I think this is kind of one for you. Just for me, it's tying concepts together so that I'm kind of understanding how both the budgets intersect. So I think for me, when we talk about using federal funds on the city side, we talk about it in kind of that scales balancing kind of mindset where right now we're going to use more federal funds for some of our longer term revenue sources because we don't have them. And as tourism comes back, as restaurants come back, as people come back to the city, we expect that revenue is going to come up so we can decrease our reliance on those federal funds. I think that is a little bit different for the school budget, in my mind at least, that the school doesn't have the same ability to generate that revenue to rebalance the scales. So then using federal funds for those longer term positions, there's less capacity to balance that on the other side. So then it really becomes that compounding problem then year over year of trying to make that up. Does that make sense? Is that accurate?
So that was an accurate representation of the way we decided to use the ARP funding in the city's budget. What I will say is that we had multiple options for looking at the way we would measure ARP funding in the budget. We could have gone the route of looking at the expenditures related to COVID, anything new that we had in the budget related to COVID, for example, increased staffing related to having to have people dispersed into larger space. So you needed more staff, more PPE, more cleaning supplies. But we chose to put that aside and just look at the revenue loss, and that more than met our needs. But if we had looked at the additional expenses in the budget, I think we would have come up with several million, possibly not 8 million, but it might have been 5, 6, 7 million of additional expenditures, and we could have used that in lieu of the revenue loss. We definitely didn't need both.
Thank you. That's it for me. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome. Andrew, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Hey, everyone. I'm not a member of this committee, so I know I don't get a vote on this. And I've been sitting with this for a while. I've attended all the meetings, trying to absorb as much as I can as one of the three newbies. One thing I keep thinking about is when my partner and I moved to Portland, one of the first things one of our new neighbors said to us was, welcome. If you have kids move out of Portland, you don't want to have kids in the Portland school district. And that's a weird first thing to hear as a new member of the city. And then, as I got more involved, I learned more about like how loaded that statement was and what it actually meant. I hear my colleagues, especially Councillor Diane, our districts are close to each other. We have a lot of similar constituents. We have multi-generational families. We have folks who have lived here for decades and decades, and they're on fixed incomes, and they're trying to age in place. This reval is just so poorly timed. And I think we all feel that right now, because on top of what feels impossible, we're already dealing with, we're also dealing with that. We have families who I've heard from a couple of folks, their concerns. Yeah, I mean, the reval, how is that going to impact me? The school budget, I want to support it, but that's another couple of bucks. But overall, I think the most common feedback I'm getting from people, and I know it's only going to amp up, is, that they want to see this direction that, the school board almost unanimously voted in. To, as many of my colleagues said, the policy, the priorities, the values, they're there. We feel them. We want to see that happen, but it's hard. I feel like I'm playing a game of Scrabble and I have 10 fewer tiles because I'm so new at this, and we're going through the school budget process, and we just started talking about the council's budget process as well. And we're kind of like putting them together. So I have a million questions that I know now is not maybe the best time to ask them. But as we're looking at, okay, we're making up this difference, 1.5 million, a difference of opinion, as Councillor Diane said. And as Councillor Fournier asked and found out from the finance director, we're looking at potentially a difference, if this were to be approved, of just under 1%. In this process, where do we start to look on the city side of, okay, if we really do want to hold these values, if we want to pursue this, if we want to see this happen, how, like, at what point do we start to, weigh things against each other? This year is impossible no matter what. I mean, I think we can all just agree this is it. I mean, this is tough. But those values aren't going to change. And it feels like we need this now more than ever. There's an urgency that I don't feel like we've felt in a long time, at least not in my life. But I don't know. I really just wanted to share what I was sitting with, how I'm processing this. One of the folks who called in was talking about, overall, we're looking at changing structural systems here after generations of not, and that's going to be expensive. Let's be honest. Like, that's going to be expensive. That's going to be difficult. This is hard. This is not easy, no matter how you swing it. So, I know that's not exactly wonderful guidance on how I want to find the funding to make this happen. I'm going to rely on my senior colleagues in the council and on the school board to help figure this out together. But looking at all of you, I know all of you, even though I have not met many of you in person, you're brilliant. And I think we can do it if we just all come together and try to, make compromise if we can. But holding those values and moving forward, I think Portland has pulled off some more challenging things than this before. And not to opine too much, because now I definitely just felt that. I do have a question buried in here. Someone called in and asked about next year's, their enrollment. I don't know actually who to ask, maybe the superintendent. On one of the meetings, did I hear correctly that we are expecting, I think, a 5% increase in enrollment next year?
No.
I made that up. Okay.
Yeah, did not hear that. We have two projections, as one of the speakers mentioned. One is if we just sort of carried over the students that were in school this year, where we had about a 2% decrease in our enrollment. And that is not what we budgeted to. We budgeted to the assumption that 2-point-some% of students that were not with us this year would come back. So that's the increase that you see, is the increase that accounts for just basically what we had projected we would have before COVID for this year.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. You sit in enough of these meetings and you just make numbers up, I guess. So I would say, yeah, just closing for me. I said it at one of the previous meetings. This is bold. The school board brought a really bold, ambitious budget to answer unprecedented times. I am supportive of it, and I want to figure it out. And I will work with whoever I need to do that at this point. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to just share where I'm at tonight.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for being here. I don't see another hand, so I guess I'll offer some comments. My short comment is I'm probably in the same place, I think, as Councillor Dion. I don't know if I can be as articulate as he has been. I guess, first of all, I think the budget you've brought forward, the expenditure side, I don't have any issues with. Bold may be the right word. I don't know what it is. What I have concerns with is how we pay for it and on the revenue side. Most years we don't have options. Some of you might think we don't have any options except for raising taxes this year. My sense is we do. Some things have been mentioned about one-time expenses that are all true. I guess I'm worried about the next few years financially for the city and the schools and for the taxpayers of Portland. I think there will have to be hard decisions made going forward. As Javier pointed out, the 1 point however many million just in the custodial cost will come back on. The debt service on the 4 elementary schools. There's a host of things that are going to have to be dealt with in the coming years, near future. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about taxpayers, and I'm worried about the programs. I just don't think this year, given what's happened with COVID, is the right time to be raising taxes in the city. And I think federal dollars, people that I talk to think they're there as a bridge. And I know other communities are using them for staffing, some of the nearby communities, the school departments. And, you know, I hear, I probably heard from as many people who don't want me to support this budget as people who do want me to support the school budget as presented. I never vote based on how many people are for or against. And frankly, there are a lot more against that I've heard from this year than I have in prior years. I think people are worried. It doesn't seem like a lot to say whatever it is, $160 or so. You know, one of my colleagues recently talked about, you know, the retired couple that has lived in their house for 30 years and they may have some sort of a mortgage they're still paying off, but they're paying their taxes and trying to have health insurance and pay their bills. And it's real money to those people. And they're not just in North Deering living in a Cape, they're in East Deering, they're in Nason's Corner, they're all over the city. Some of these people, you know, they have homes that are valued at a lot of money before the revaluation, but they're property rich. They're not rich people. They just have property that is valued at a high dollar. And it's true up and down the coast of Maine and on the lakes and other places. You know, somebody mentioned earlier, I don't remember who it was, one of the speakers mentioned the recent census and, you know, the census data, and let me see if I wrote it down, but, you know, try to attract and keep people, but that we're kind of stagnant and we have, I don't remember the exact words, but, you know, an older population. And that older population has a harder time because they're usually on fixed incomes paying their property taxes. So, you know, in the revaluation, I think it is terrible timing. It was supposed to be done last year, and if COVID hadn't come, we probably would have done it. But I don't know how much. I mean, I think it has an impact, certainly, because 2/3 of the people who live in the city, if you believe, you know, the theory that a third will go down, a third will stay the same, and a third will will go up with their taxes from the based on the revaluation, then 2/3 of the people in the city will see an impact on an increase in their property taxes. And I come back, I look downtown and I look at more storefronts for lease signs in them. People can't find people to work. I don't know how that factors, into the businesses closing or or what it is. But I struggle with this increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. So like I said, I don't have a problem with the expenditure. I think this is a year when there are other sources. I understand the school board and the superintendent may have a plan that doesn't include using 1.4 or 5 million to keep the tax rate down and use that money in other places over the next few years. But kind of where I am is I think we need to get the tax rate down, provide the programs you have, and in the next couple of years, as that money begins to go away, unless more comes, figure out how that's going to be, what needs to be kept long-term and what doesn't. So, like I said, Councillor Dion probably said it more articulately, but I'm kind of in the same place. And anyway, that's where I am. I don't know if any other councillors want to speak. I don't see any hands going up. So I would say at this point, I mean, what's on our agenda is I'm not sure exactly how it's worded, but is to, let's see, take action on the proposed school board budget. So I guess I would ask for a motion on the budget and then ask if there are any amendments on the budget. Do I have a motion?
I couldn't unmute my phone. Sorry, the dogs.
We need that Chris Hoff's little sign that we saw the other night that says.
I do. Can I just have one that says "so moved"?
Like that.
Yeah, motion to advance the budget.
So we have a motion on the school board budget as presented. Is there a second? I'll second it. Mark, if you want to second it.
I'll second it for purposes of a vote.
Okay. So now do we have committee comment or any suggested amendments? I would suggest an amendment that would, and Brendan, what is the amount that would get us to zero?
Let me just run the exact number. That is 1,468,000.
I lost the end of that because I lost my screen. Could you say it again?
So it would be a reduction of 1,468,000. The school tax levy, instead of being 100,582,000, would be. Oh boy, hold on one second. $99,114,506.
99,514. Is that what you said?
114,506.
So that would be the amount to be raised by taxes. Is that correct?
Correct.
So procedurally, and I'm not sure if there's an amendment to that, but my suggestion would be an amendment to get the amount to be raised by taxes to that number. Procedurally, do we have to change any other numbers?
I don't believe so. I mean, I think if your motion just said and any other associated figures that we could adjust in the bond order, but that's the bottom line number that the council typically votes on.
So that would be a suggestion I have for an amendment.
If I'm correct, Mr. Chair, Counselor Fournier would have to accept that as a friendly amendment. If she does not.
No, you could offer the amendment, and if she seconded it, that would be fine, or I could second it.
I would second your amendment, but my question procedurally is whether or not she has to accept the amendment, or do we have to vote on her original motion?
No, this would be an amendment to the original motion. So it would be a main motion as amended if there are votes to amend it.
All right.
So were you making that motion, or was I?
You're making the motion, Nick.
Okay. I move that the amount to be raised by taxes be $99,114,506 with any other associated numbers that have to be addressed.
I think it's 406 or no?
406?
If you do the math, yeah.
I'm not doing the math. I'll leave it to you guys.
I'm doing the math. 99,114,406.
99,114,406. Then that's the number I'd offer.
I think it is 506. Brendan rounded up the first time. It's $1,467,900 that it has to be reduced by.
Okay, I didn't do that math.
But yeah,
I just did the. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm signing off. Sorry.
So it's 506. Is that what I heard? The number Brendan gave. And Mark, you seconded that. Is it now discussion on the amendment by the committee?
Okay.
I don't see anyone. I guess I would say that all we can do is adjust that number. Like I said, I support the total amount that you have. I would hope that the committee school board would consider using the federal funds as a bridge for this year to get to that point. So unless there are any other comments by the committee, I'll call the roll for a vote on the amendment. April?
Yes.
Mark? Yes.
I'm a yes. So the amendment is to reduce it to $99,514,406 to be raised by taxes. 506, Belinda, did I say it wrong?
99,114,506.
I've written it over a couple times, so thank you. Now on the, any discussion on the main motion as amended? Don't see any, so I'll call the roll. April?
Yes.
Where are you, Mark? Mark?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously, and the recommendation to the council would be to reduce the budget to that number to be raised by taxes. Just so people know, this is a recommendation from this committee, and it will go to the council for first reading and public hearing and second reading and action by the council. And we'll, I'm sure, hear back from the school board and the superintendent if there are any things that would, we should know about before that comes forward. Thank you everyone for coming to speak. Thanks for all the elected officials and appointed officials here. I say to the school board and superintendent and staff, I know this is not the vote that you wanted. So I apologize for that, but it's where the committee is at this point. So thank you. And I know we'll be talking to you, I'm sure, soon.